Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, January 21st, 2022. New York business owners sidestep billions in federal taxes with the state's help. That's the title of an article written by Richard Rubin that appeared in the January 11th, 2022 Wall Street Journal. Now, in 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act limited the state and local tax deduction, commonly abbreviated the SALT deduction, to $10,000. Previously, it had been unlimited. Now, this means that wealthy taxpayers who paid more than $10,000 in state and local taxes could no longer reduce their taxable income by the full amount that their states were charging them. In states with high income and property taxes, this resulted in a significantly higher federal tax bill for many high-end taxpayers. Now, this SALT cap was pushed by Republicans to help offset the income losses to the U.S. Treasury caused by the increase in the standard deduction to $24,000 and the reduction in the top income tax rate from 39.6% to 37%. Now, many of these high-tax states are represented by Democrats, and they're alarmed. They're afraid that the SALT cap will cause their wealthiest residents to flee to states with low property taxes and no state income tax. And these fears are well-founded. Many have already done so. Now that Democrats are in the majority, they're trying to raise the SALT cap from $10,000 to $80,000. They've inserted that provision into their Build Back Better Act. Now, according to the Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a family of four in Washington making $1 million a year would receive 10 times as much tax relief next year from expanding the SALT deduction as a middle-class family would receive from another provision in the bill, an expansion of the child tax credit. Citing calculations from the nonpartisan Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, the group said that the proposed hike in the SALT cap would result in 2/3 of households making more than $1 million a year receiving a federal tax cut. Now, in the meantime, 22 states have passed laws that allow small business owners to exclude billions of dollars that would have been subject to federal income tax under the 2017 SALT rules. In his article, Mr. Rubin states, New York business owners are saving billions of dollars in taxes using a state-approved system for sidestepping the $10,000 federal cap on SALT deduction. If these New York business owners have an average federal tax rate of 32%, they'd be saving more than $3 billion in federal income taxes. Now, regardless of the actual federal income tax percentage, the federal government is losing money, and the rest of us are having to make up the difference in higher tax rates or fewer deductions. And finally, New York and several other states have filed a federal lawsuit alleging that the SALT cap is unconstitutional. Now, so far, that has failed at both the district and appeals court levels. Last week, the states asked the Supreme Court to hear the case. Now, you would think that this obvious attempt to evade the provisions of federal law and reduce income to the federal treasury would be recognized as unlawful and that the IRS would fight it vigorously. Isn't that what happens when some unwitting taxpayer invests in a tax shelter that saves some money on taxes? Well, that's not the case at all. On November 9th, 2020, the IRS released Notice 20-75, which actually condones this action by the states to provide a higher deduction to their wealthiest citizens. Now, there's no argument that it's beneficial to these high-tax states to try and hold on to their wealthy taxpayers by giving them the ability to reduce their federal tax burden without having to move to a low-tax state. There's also no argument that giving wealthy taxpayers this break means that other, less wealthy taxpayers will have to make up for the lost revenue. In conclusion, for the 90% of U.S. taxpayers who do not itemize and simply take the standard deduction, if we owed $10,000 in state and local taxes, we would have to earn between $11,000 and $15,000 in order to net that $10,000. Now, under the FAIRtax, there is no federal income tax, and therefore there is no deduction for state and local taxes. However, with the FAIRtax, everyone, not just the wealthy, would receive a great benefit. Everyone would receive 100% of their income and pay no federal tax until we make retail purchases of new goods and services. Also, state and local taxes are not subject to the fair tax. So, with the fair tax, if you owe $10,000 in state and local taxes, you'd only have to earn $10,000, not the $11,000 or $15,000 you'd need under the current system in order to pay your state and local tax bills. Everyone is treated fairly. What a concept. Now, this isn't too popular with the ruling class and its minions in Congress. They're making a lot of money selling special tax benefits to wealthy donors, and the fair tax would eliminate that lucrative income source. So, the ruling class instructs its minions in Congress to call for taxing the wealthy and tries to drive a wedge between us. However, this arrogant attempt to increase the SALT cap in the Build Back Better Act and to support the state's actions that benefit only the state's wealthiest citizens tells us that they're not really interested at all in helping the rest of us. 18th century philosopher and economist Edmund Burke said, "To tax and to please, no more than to love and to be wise, is not given to men." Now, we all know this is true. We all want to keep more of our money so we can provide a better standard of living for ourselves and our families. And we can certainly understand why the wealthy would seek to take advantage of whatever tax savings they're offered. However, we want taxes to be fair. That means that they're paid by everyone, not just by those who can't afford to purchase special treatment. The great operatic tenor Robert Brault said, "The IRS is an agency modeled after the revenue-raising concepts of the famous 19th century economist Jesse James." Now, truth be told, it's not really the IRS that's at fault here. Now, yes, some IRS employees do seem to delight in wielding power and trying to intimidate honest taxpayers. However, the only reason that the IRS exists at all is that the ruling class keeps it in place and continues to add thousands of pages to an already incomprehensible Internal Revenue Code. Our federal tax code has long since passed the point where even highly trained and highly paid tax professionals don't really understand it, and they can't always agree on what it says. On the other hand, the fair tax is collected by the states. There will be no more need for the IRS under the fair tax. Now, isn't it time that our elected members of Congress stop spending their time providing tax benefits to special interest groups for which the rest of us pay? That they begin devoting their time to solving the real problems that affect our country and all of its citizens? That they stop trying to control us by giving or withholding income tax benefits, and that they pledge that all federal taxes will be paid when new retail goods and services are purchased. It's time for us to take back control and demand that Congress pass the fair tax. So, what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay, and we'll know how much tax we're paying because taxes will no longer be hidden from us. They'll be clearly shown on every retail receipt. So if you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to fairtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.